Oh, so the other day I set out to try and mill up this walnut log here. Now, as you can see, it's still sitting here and it didn't quite work out as I'd hoped. I got about 4 slabs into it and it was just nail after nail, and of course I was using a brand new bar and chain, so I decided to call it quits because I really didn't want to take a chance of messing those up. Now, I did film the process of that, and if you'd like to see it, I'll link in the description and the card, you know how it goes. But the reason why I bring all this up is because in that video I said I could turn some bowl blanks from this because the nails aren't too bad and I should be able to get some bowl blanks from it. And I thought, why end on this log, such a really pretty log actually, on a sad note, not being able to mill it, and show y'all how a bowl can be turned from it. So with that said, let me grab my chainsaw and gear and let's get a bowl blank prepped. I'm not sure what I was thinking. I think I went somewhere wrong with the bowl blank size that I wanted because I knew I'd be turning a large piece today, but it's a little bit bigger than what I anticipated. But it is what it is. It's black walnut. I rarely ever get to turn it like this, so I'm not going to waste it. It'll be alright. It'll just take a little bit longer than I planned, but it is what it is. I'm excited for this. So let me get my faceplate on here, get this thing on the lathe, and then I'll explain a little bit more about what I had in mind for today. Alright, now that I've got my workout in for the day, I figured it's time to kind of explain a little bit more about what I'm trying to accomplish. So, if you didn't know, I am a huge history nerd. I love all sorts of history. It doesn't really matter the topic, the time period, whatever it could be. Maritime history, military history, weird and paranormal history, and then, of course, art history. So, also, before I move on, art history college classes, those are for the birds. I've done enough of those. But when it comes to, say, like museums, galleries, historic locations, that kind of thing, I could do it all day long. And it's actually one of my favorite things to do when I travel. So now that you know that, the other night I came across 7 vases, and I'll show them on screen, that date back to the Zhou dynasty, which was in China around 220 BC to 1050, somewhere around there. And I thought it'd be kind of a cool thing to try and replicate one of those because one of them really caught my eye. And I thought that'd be fun to try and, in essence, copy. It's something I've wanted to explore, and I will say this is not necessarily some original or creative idea, which copying work being original is kind of an oxymoron, I guess. But What I mean is there's actually a lot of wood turners and woodworkers and just artists in general that kind of replicate historic work. And something I've actually personally never done. Now I've used historic pieces as inspiration for my work, but I want to kind of outright try and copy this. And I thought it'd just be kind of a fun experiment to do. Now, when I say that, I don't necessarily mean detail for detail because it is ceramic and it's something I can't necessarily do on wood, but it's better said that I will rely really heavy on it for inspiration. So that's what I'm going to try today. And I'm also kind of using this as an experiment because I have a video idea for the future that I'm sort of working on, planning on, and I kind of want to expand on that idea. But before I say too much, I'm going to go take a quick water break and then we can get this thing shaped and just see how it goes. Alright, so the outside is about finished. All I've got left to do now is to finish up the tenon here. And I've got a little bit more finessing to do on the bottom side here, a little bit of shear scraping, clean it up a little bit. And then also I've got my handle here, which is what this big bead around the form is. Now, if you've seen any of my videos where I make dough balls, I'm probably going to try and use the same technique that I do with those. It's where I'll take this, mark out the handles, the sections that I want, and then use the bandsaw to cut away the sections that I don't. However, I'm not entirely sure yet. I might end up using, say, like an Arbortech grinder or some rotary tools like wood burrs and that kind of thing. I'm not sure yet. But also, I wanted to talk about, this is kind of where, like I mentioned, this is experimental, and then like both video-wise and turning-wise, but also I'm still leaning on this for inspiration and not necessarily copying it like shape for shape, because in the vase that I'm copying, which I'll show on screen now, the handle is a little bit wider than what I have here, or I guess you want to call them handles. And then when I was turning this, I made a mistake and I ended up having to take away more wood than I initially planned when I was roughing it out. And so this handle that I have on here is going to be smaller. I wanted the handles on here to be more closer to the vase that I'm replicating, but it's a part of learning, it's the part of experimenting, and so I'm now having to kind of reconfigure the way I want to do this as far as like design-wise goes, but that's okay. Forces me to be a little bit creative here. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm not unhappy with it. I'm really happy so far with everything and how it's turned out. I've just got to figure out how I want to do the handles. But anyways, I think this is going to turn into a 2-day project. So what I'm going to do now, like I said, is finish up the tenon, smooth up the outside, flip it around, and then we will figure out what I'm going to do with the handles, and then we'll call it a day and get back in here tomorrow to do the inside. So anyways, I'm going to get this thing back on, and let's get this outside done. All right, well, now that I've got the piece on the workbench, I have realized that this handle portion here is a lot smaller than I had planned. Now, I said earlier that I had turned it smaller than I really had wanted, but now that I've been able to walk around it and take a good look from all sides, it's a lot smaller than I really did want it to be. It's all right though. Just going to have to change on the fly a little bit. Now, the vase that I am trying to replicate, it has two loops, handles, whatever you want to call it, has them on either side. And I think I'm going to take a technique that is similar to that and do the same look, however, put multiples on them. I'm thinking 4. I might lay out 6 just to see how it looks. But yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do now. Since they're so small, I'd rather fill in the space so it gives it a more, I don't know if cohesive is the right word, but it kind of fills in the space more, because I think if I do 2 on the sides, it'll just be too small. But yeah, again, trying to remain positive, because again, I am just experimenting, trying something new here. It's going to be okay. This is not the final time that I'm going to be turning something like this. So, but anyways, I believe I'm going to be able to do whatever I end up doing. I'll be able to hog off the majority of the work on the bandsaw here, and then just clean up with the rotary tool and the sander. So anyways, let me get that done. I'm going to lay these out and get those cut out. Alright, so I did decide to lay out or stick to 4 little handles here. I did lay out 8 of them, and it just seemed like there was too much going on, and I realized when I laid out 6 that I would have to divide it differently. So for simplicity's sake, I just stuck with 4, and I also just really do think it has the most cohesive look to the piece. So let's find out. Alright, so I've got a little bit of a confession before I call it an afternoon. Before I cut out the handles here, I was actually really starting to doubt this piece and whether I was going to like the way that it was going to come together. Now, I know I said I was excited, and I really was, but I was really concerned that I had turned these little handles too small, and thought it was going to look a little goofy when we got it cut out. But I stand very corrected. I am absolutely in love with the way this is looking so far. I think 4 little handles was the call. Granted, now looking at it, I think 2 would have been okay, but 4 just adds a really unique look to it, and also, like I said earlier, I think it is a very cohesive look. But yeah, I'm really excited. It's got me motivated to wanting to turn more work like this. I'm in love with this. This is probably one of my favorite pieces I've turned in quite some time. So I don't know why I doubted it, but I have done that in the past. I'm going to call it an afternoon, so get this thing packed in its shaving so that, fingers crossed, we don't get any cracks, and I will catch y'all tomorrow. Well, definitely had a false sense of security with this piece. I have busted through the wall. I don't know what it is about this walnut log. It's like everything I've done with it has been some sort of issue, which this ultimately was my fault. It's not like I put the nails in the log. This was my fault. And the reason why it happened is because when I sanded and shaped over the outside here, because I didn't do it as even as I should have, there's spots that are nice and consistent, and then there's other spots like this where it's paper thin and it's busting through. So what I'm gonna do is try to safely remove this part where it's broken, and then I'll just turn a bowl from the rest of it, because the rest of it obviously is still pretty good. So I'm gonna do that, but yeah, I guess the silver lining is this gives me an excuse to try this again, which I was probably going to whether this is successful or not, but now I have a for certain reason to try this again. So anyways, like I said, I'm going to safely remove this half here, this top half, and then I will go on and continue the bowl. So I'll catch back up once I do that. Well, the top part has been snapped off, and I just realized I didn't film that. I'm not sure why. I really wish I would have, but either way, it came off fairly clean and even, so all I've got left to do now is take the bowl gouge and even this up or clean it up, whatever, and then finish hollowing out the inside. So let's get started on that. I'm still bummed about it, but it is what it is. At least I get to salvage some part of it. Well, that wasn't too bad, and even though it's not the Zhao Dynasty vase that I set out to replicate, it's still a pretty bowl nonetheless. I mean, you can't really go wrong with black walnut, so it is what it is. Like I said a few times, it's really okay, and I'm just glad I was able to salvage actually over half of this bowl and still get something from it. So I'm gonna go get this thing put away for drying. Turn the walls kind of thin, about 1/4 of an inch, so it shouldn't take too long. And that said, I'll see y'all in a few weeks. Well, the bowl is finally dry. It's ready to be sanded and oiled. And it's been a few weeks, but to be honest with y'all, I'm still pretty disappointed that this one did not work out as I'd hoped. However, like I've mentioned a few times now, this is just a part of the process. It comes with the territory of turning enclosed vessels of like what this was supposed to be. But either way, it's walnut, so it's pretty much guaranteed to still be a very pretty bowl. Excited to get some oil on it, so let's get this one on the lathe. Alright folks, well thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me throughout the process of this piece. And down in the comments, let me know if you also like to use history to influence your work. And this is not necessarily directed just at the woodturners that watch these videos, but if you do clay work, sculptural work, music, or painting, because if you didn't know, I also enjoy painting outside of woodworking. And for the longest time, really ever since I started, art that I guess Impressionism, people like Van Gogh, artists like Van Gogh, Monet, those guys, they've always had a heavy influence on me and who I am as an artist and my style. So I'd like to hear y'all stories though, how y'all like to use history to influence your work as well. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that like button. And if you'd like to help out the channel even more and you enjoy this type of video, you can always subscribe as well. So I'm gonna get my mask on, get this thing sanded and get some oil on it, and I will see y'all next time.